Hoop Heads podcast is brought to you by Head Start Basketball.
I've always said I wanted three things, and that would be academic. We have to be academically standing very, very well. I don't want to play kids that even have D's on the report card. And if I get that started early, then I don't have to worry about it later, because I don't want to mess with a kid that's going to be borderline ineligible and then I just lose them. Then socially, the same way, I want to be able to do community service. I want our kids out. I want them to be seen. If the community sees them, they'll be more invested in coming into games. And then, basketball-wise, just playing the right way, playing for their teammates, playing for each other, not playing for themselves. I think the biggest compliment to a coach is when, you're losing by 20 or 30 and your kids are still battling the entire time. They don't give up. They don't put their heads down. They don't feel sorry for themselves. They play.
Coach Monty Patel is an assistant basketball coach at North Little Rock High School in Arkansas. He's worked for 5 head coaches in 5 years and gone from an unknown school in West Arkansas to the top school in the state. Monty is the first person to graduate high school in his entire family line, first with a college degree, and about to be the first with a master's degree. He's the only basketball coach of Indian descent in the state of Arkansas. His parents were first-generation immigrants from the country of India and wanted him to become a doctor, lawyer, or business owner. But Monty wanted to be a basketball coach. Monty Patel went into coaching because he didn't want kids to ever feel that their coach didn't have their back or didn't want them to be their best. If you're enjoying the Hoop Heads pod, please leave us a 5-star rating and review, because that helps other coaches, players, and parents find our show. If you don't like the show, please continue to listen, but never ever leave a bad review. Instead, just take a breath and count to 10. Today's episode of the Hoop Heads podcast is brought to you by Raise Your Game, the new book by Alan Stein Jr.
Hello, Hoop Heads. This is Alan Stein Jr. My new book, Raise Your Game, High Performance Secrets from the Best of the Best, will be available from all major book retailers on January 8th. Raise Your Game takes a rare peek behind the curtain and shows you what the top coaches and players in the game do during the unseen hours. I share their routines, rituals, and habits, as well as proven strategies that you can implement with your team immediately. If you want to maximize your coaching impact and influence, order your copy today at raiseyourgamebook.com. And in the spirit of the holidays, if you're interested in purchasing multiple copies for your coaching staff, team, or program, I am offering several bonuses, like a 40% discount, signed copies, and a private video call with your team. But you'll have to place your order before Christmas. Once again, go to raiseyourgamebook.com for everything you need.
Please be prepared to take some notes as you enjoy this episode with Coach Monty Patel from North Little Rock High School in the state of Arkansas.
Hello and welcome to the Hoop Heads podcast. It's Mike Klinzing here with my co-host Jason Sunkel, and today we are welcoming Coach Monty Patel to the podcast. Monty, welcome.
Appreciate it. Glad to be here.
Yeah, we're excited to have you on and get a chance to talk a little hoops with you tonight. So we want to go back to how you first got into the game and what it was that made you really fall in love with the game of basketball when you were a kid.
Well, to start off, I didn't play 7th through 9th grade. I just was more or less always felt I wasn't athletic enough and good enough to play. And then all of a sudden, I remember being on TV watching J.J. Redick light up Texas. And I just fell in love with Redick and just him just firing 3 after 3, drilling left and right from my memory of the game. And so I was like, you know what? I just need to play basketball. I need to go. I like to go play street ball and just with friends. I need to get on an organized team. So I ended up joining my 10th grade year to get on the basketball team. It's probably the worst 10th grader you could imagine in your life.
Well, hey, everybody's got to start somewhere, right?
Had to start somewhere. And then from there, I was working on just being able to dribble the ball between my legs to learning to shoot and having good form. And I lucked out, and I'll give credit where credit's due. We started playing pickup games a lot after school, and one of the guys that actually opened up the gym was Jason Jennings. He went to my high school. He was drafted by the Trailblazers. He was the only person to ever be drafted from Arkansas State University, where I went to college. And so he would talk and give us tips, and then playing against elite talent, you just have no choice but to get better.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's one of the things that, has kind of come through as a theme with the different coaches that we've talked about when we talk to them about their playing careers is that, the guys that really ended up improving and getting better and ended up playing at whatever level they finished at, they cited the fact that you got to play against better competition. You got to challenge yourself in order to get better. And I'm sure now when you're on the other side of it as a coach, you see that same thing. So talk a little bit about what you were able to accomplish in your high school career. I know one of the things that, you sent over to us prior to the podcast said that you didn't get an opportunity maybe to play as much as you thought as a high school player, and that you really wish that you could have had a coach maybe that pushed you a little bit harder to improve both as an individual and and from a team aspect.
I'm an honest, open person. I know I probably wasn't as good as I thought I was, and I understand that. But I felt at that time that I could bring something to the table. I'd worked in the summer to shoot. I loved getting on the gun and just shooting up threes. And I always knew I wasn't the biggest and strongest. But a big thing for me was when I started coaching Pee Wee, and we got asked to coach Pee Wee because the parents were always too hard on the kids. So we started doing that, and I remember one of the kids I coached asked me about helping him with homework, and I was like, sure, why not? And so I helped him with his math homework. It was simple for me at the time, 10th, 11th grade, 3rd, 4th grade math isn't very hard. And so I teach the kid what he needs to know, and then he comes back to the next practice talking about he made a C or a B on his test, very excited, and it was like very fulfilling. And then I saw my competitive nature, and then I'm playing against my teammates and coaching against them. And we're having fun, but we're also heated because we're competitors at the same time. And then the older I got, in 10th, 11th, 12th, then coming into college, I knew I didn't want kids to go through a coach who didn't care for them and didn't build relationships. From my understanding, still to this day, out of the 20 guys I had on my high school team as a senior, not one of us have contact with our head coach. And that is a shame to me because I'm the type of coach who always wants to check in on my players, whether they played college, whether they didn't, whatever it may be. I just want to see how you're doing, whether it be on Facebook and I comment with some snarky remark because I just like to be fun around the kids.
Right.
But just keep in contact with you and letting you know I'm here for you. I love you. I care about you. I got kids that still hit me up, Coach, look, I need $20. And, I don't make a lot of money, but I'm still going to give you $20 and say, hey, if you get your degree, if you're doing something right, then that's fine. You're in college. You're broke. I understand that. You might not want to ask your parents for money, whatever you may be spending it on. As long as it's not drugs or anything crazy, then, I don't mind. But I didn't have that luxury, and it really, even to this day, it bothers me. I ran into him actually at a wedding, and I didn't even want to look him in the eye because it just brought back all these memories of me just not wanting to be next to him. And then, ironically, we're sitting at the same table, and neither one of us exchanged a word because he kind of knows where we thought on him, and I know where I thought on him, And it sounds bad, and I'm not trying to sound negative. It's just at that point I learned in college when I started hearing other people talk about their coaches and telling funny stories that, hey, if you build a relationship with your coach, he will be someone or she will be someone there for you forever. And no matter what, it's someone you respect and someone you love. And I didn't ever want a kid to have to go through that situation where they didn't have a coach they cared for.
Yeah, I think there's two things that I want to touch on, though. I'm going to come back to your last point about building relationships with kids, and I want to swing back to the other thing that you said. So when you guys were in high school, you were coaching like the local recreation teams while you were a high school player. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So that's the system that I grew up under. So when I was a kid, I got an opportunity to play for guys who were in high school. So when I was in, again, 3rd, 4th, 5th grade, I was playing for high school kids that played on the varsity team in my community. And then conversely, when I got to be in high school, then I got to coach some of those kids who were younger than me. And that's one of the things that I still tell people to this day, that I have multiple friends from both of those situations. I have guys that coached me, and then I have guys that I coached that I'm still in touch with to this very day. And to me, that's something that, obviously now we've gone to that system that you experienced, that I experienced, is almost gone. I don't really know, at least not here in the Cleveland area. I don't know that there's really anywhere where communities are still doing that type of programming. It's now all been taken over by, parent, father, mother coaches. And so I think that's something that I really thought was tremendous value to me growing up. And so I'm glad to hear that there's somebody else that got to experience that, Monty, because I just think that was a great thing to be able to develop relationships. And in my case, it ended up being lifelong relationships. And then to build on your second point, which was that as a coach, wanting to have those kinds of relationships with players where when you do see them at a wedding, 15 years after you graduated, it's so sad to me that from both of your perspectives that there wasn't a relationship there that could even foster a conversation. Because to me, as I've gotten older, one of the things that I love about coaching is the ability to build those relationships. And to hear you say that how important that is to you, I think that, again, sometimes people tend to focus so much on X's and O's of the game and not so much on the relationship piece of it. And I think if you really talk to anybody who's been a basketball player, what's really important is not that you don't have to know X's and O's, but that relationship building, I think, is so critical.
No, I agree. And one of the crazy parts of, like, going back to the point about me coaching little kids, one of the kids on the team, his dad was our principal, and his dad was my athletic director that hired me 2 years out of college at one of the bigger schools in the state. And so that relationship and him seeing me there and then growing up and knowing me for years on years, still offering me a job after that, to come be an assistant coach at the high school that he was the athletic director at, that, one of the bigger schools with a loaded team. And it speaks on the type of relationship that he had and that what he saw at a younger age for me, and then what he thought of me later on in life. And it's just crazy. And I tell my kids that I teach, I teach Algebra 1, tell them all the time, you don't know who you're going to need later on in life because you don't know what path you're taking right now. And I lucked out into taking this path, and this guy offered me a job.
And so that first job, I know you said that you walked into a loaded situation. So can you describe what that was like being on a team that was, being a coach on a team that was so successful that first year? Can you describe what that experience was like for you?
Well, can I backtrack you for 1 second?
Absolutely.
So my first job out of college, I lived in Jonesboro, Arkansas, and I got my first job offer 5 hours from where I was going to college, where I knew anybody, west, okay, and didn't know the coach. One of my friends played for him in 8th grade and said he was looking for an assistant, and my friend was already in the business. I didn't interview for the job, and the first day I got there was to sign a contract. And that's when, and we'd kind of touch base on where I started my career, and since that point on, I'd never worked for the same guy. So really, my first 2 years was well before this athletic director that hired me from where I was going to high school at.
Wow, so it's interesting that you ended up in that particular spot, and it's funny how the people end up get an opportunity to help you in ways, and then at other times you kind of fall into situations. So as you looked at that opportunity, describe what it was like your first year coaching, that first time when you got an opportunity to really coach at the at an interscholastic level as opposed to just coaching the Pee Wee Rec League.
And I was so excited. I still won't forget. I was, got my Facebook status up telling all my friends, I'm moving 5 hours. I've got a job. I've got a contract. I'm at a school that no one's ever heard of. There were 2 small schools that just recently consolidated. It was the second year they were open. And I got down there, and literally the first week I was like, what did I walk into? And then I started calling all the people that I knew around because, when you get into the business, especially in Arkansas, where we don't have that many schools, you take the first job that you get in, so you're in the business, and you have references you can build up. And this guy I was working for was like my playbook of what never to do as a coach, what type of example to not be. And throughout that year, I was the most miserable person. I was like, maybe this sports just isn't for me. From playing career to now, like maybe it wasn't for me. And then eventually at the end of the year, they let that guy go because of all the things that he had done at the school that were just the wrong way. So like my first year of coaching was absolutely the worst year that I would never ever wish upon anybody. I was by myself as a head junior high coach, and on the bench I had no input as an assistant, and he didn't even let the kids respect me. You know, he would blame kids, or he would blame me on the bad games that we might have had, or something that, you know, I might have not had anything to do with. I can vividly remember trading films, and he thought that I was giving out our film for us to lose, when in actuality I was getting another film of the opponent we were playing, which most coaches do.
Right.
But, you know, that ends up being a nut situation. I call all the people that I know in the coaching circle that I've met. They're all like, he's been ran out of everywhere. I didn't know that's who you're working for. I didn't know that's where you landed. So my first year was a complete wash, and I almost got out. And then that's when my second year was marvelous. It was amazing. This guy, Wendell Cartwright, he was a hometown guy. He came back to take the head coaching job at Cossatot River, which was a school I was at. And he taught me so much about just being a professional, about X's and O's, about holding kids accountable, about holding myself accountable, and about being very meticulous about what I do. This guy has a notebook, which amazes me, has a notebook from every day of practice where he wrote down what happened in practice, whatever story, whatever practice drill, whatever went wrong, and he just goes back and read them because he knows he's going to forget about it, and he likes to go back and remember those memories. And I'm thinking, man, I didn't even ever think about doing this. You know, I thought, make a practice plan, put it down. And he's teaching me, make a practice plan, keep your practice plan, look at it 5 years from now because you might need this again.
Yeah, I mean, I think hearing you talk, so your first year, you basically learned what not to do. And then, so it was an education, just a reverse education. And then your second year, you finally got with somebody who really was, you know, taking their coaching profession seriously and really trying to do the right thing. And that idea of writing stuff down, I know that John Wooden used to do that and write down on a little note card, little notes during practice of, hey, you know, we need to work on this, or I need to work with player X on this particular skill. And I think that's something that, I could say in all honesty, in the time when I was coaching, I did that occasionally, but certainly didn't do it all the time. But when I did find the time to do it, I found it to be extremely valuable because, like, to your point, you don't remember. You know, the practices all kind of start to run together and you forget what drill you did on this day and, you know, what you were working on, or maybe something jumps into your head and then it jumps back out just as fast. And so I think if you do write it down, it's great advice for any coach out there. If you do have an opportunity or the will to be able to write something down after every practice, I can only see where that could enhance your ability to coach your team.
It really did. And, you know, and I told Wendell, I said, you know, I'm just not a writer. I'm a computer guy. I'm, I guess, a millennial. I have to type it up. I have to draw it up and then save it on a computer in a folder because I'm not good with binders. And I remember I was about to interview for a job. It was like 2 days before the interview, and Wendell had called in sick. He was sick that day. And I found my prime opportunity because, you know, he shared a notebook with me of all his stuff, all the plays, all the drills that we do and all that. He told me, you know, if you write these down, you will remember them, and it will help you remember them later. I said, okay, you know, I'll get around to it one day. Man, that guy left. I took that notebook, ran to the teacher's lounge, and copied every single page. Told him about 3 years later, too.
Hey, then you had to get the scanner going, man, right? So you can get them in digital form. Then you didn't even need the paper anymore.
It was all PDF.
Nice. That's awesome. That's hilarious.
I told him, I was like, you know what type of guy I am. And I told him, I think I actually told him this year, and he just fell out laughing. He was like, I would have never thought about doing that. And I know you hate writing because it's just not my thing. I'll type up anything in 2 minutes and over writing something that'll take 20. And he was just like, this is something you would do. And I'm like, look, coach, it's just, I got what I needed, you know?
For sure. So what was your role that year? What were some of the responsibilities that he gave you? Because I think one of the things that a good head coach does is to help their assistants grow by giving them responsibilities. And like you said, in the first year, you know, you weren't valued, you weren't respected. And I think a good coach obviously goes the other direction and really tries to, you know, instill in their players that, hey, we got to have respect for our assistants. And then they give the assistants tasks and things that they're charged with doing. So what was your role there, like that year with Wendell?
So he came in and, he had kind of talked about what he liked to do, asked about the team, asked about the guys, because he knew I'd already been there a year. And he'd show me the drills and show me stuff he likes to run and things he likes to do, and then any kind of suggestion I had. I was also the head junior high coach too, so I told him, whatever he wants these guys to learn, I'll teach them. And so senior high wise, it was if he was doing the offense, I was all defense, and then we'd flip flop. If he wanted all defense, I'd go offense. So I always worked on different stuff. He was like, if I have a quick hitter, give it to him, and or teach the kids, let them learn it. If it's a good one, he wants it because he loves a good quick hitter. And so doing things like that, and then me, I always did any kind of assistant stuff, just cause, without even anyone having to tell me. Get the camera, get the manager, get all that stuff set up, jerseys, all that good stuff. And he always just helped. And I was like, Coach, you're the head coach. In my opinion, if you're a head coach, your assistant should do a lot for you and make your life easier. So I always just try to do everything I could. And then, on top of that, he just, taught me about just how different things work, what to know about the system, what to know about the game, different strategies, different defenses I've not even heard of that he thought about teaching and just teaching me. And so then my responsibilities more or less became just being a good assistant to him and being a good friend to him, and whatever he needed, I did. Whatever I needed, he did. He helped me grow because he never came to my junior high practice. He was in the office and always told me if I needed anything to holler at him. But he always let me have it just so I would grow at a quicker rate than having him as a crutch like, hey, I don't get this, or I might need help with this, or how do I want to teach this? And he was like, he more or less told me afterwards, you figured it out. And he knew we had a bad team. I loved the kids we had, but we were bad. And he was like, I've never seen someone have such a bad team and come in and work like you do. He told me this on the bus. I was trying not to tear up. I'm not that emotional of a guy, but I was like talking about this game we had. I was like, man, I outcoached this dude. I was so mad because it was a guy I really didn't care to lose to. And I was just like, I outcoached him. I coached him. He's like, no, you didn't. And I was like, excuse me? Like, you're my head coach. And he was like, you outcoached him in practice. You didn't outcoach him in the game. The game stuff's easy. He's like, I have never seen someone have such kids that don't care about basketball, make them care enough to come practice hard for him every day. I've never seen that. He's like, and you come in every day, you're not mad that y'all aren't very good, and you come in and just do it. And I respected it so much that he just told me straight up, like, here's where you're right, here's where you're wrong, and here's what you're doing that's good,
Yeah, I think to hear you say that is, I think, a testament to what kind of coach you are, that basically what you've done and the message that you're sending to your kids is that, look, the end result may not be what we want it to be, and maybe we're not the most talented group, and maybe we're not going to win a lot of games, but the reality is that all we can control is how hard we work. And I think when the coach demonstrates that type of behavior and that type of commitment, then it's going to pass along to the kids. And that's all anybody can ask. We're not all going to go undefeated. Talent plays a role in who ends up winning. But the reality is that we can control the process. We can control our attitude and how hard we work. And I think that's a credit to you that, someone else obviously recognized that you were doing those things. And I'm sure the kids that played for you, again, if you ask them 20 years from now what their record was, they're not going to care at all. They're just going to remember that Coach Patel cared about them and gave them everything they had.
No, for sure. And that's the main purpose of it. Is I told those guys, we had a chance to knock off the 1 seed. Remember, our biggest player fouled out with about 3 minutes left. We're only down 6-5, something like that, to a really good team that ended up winning the district championship. And I look at these guys afterwards, and they think I'm about to be mad because, the season's over for us. And I'm like, I'm so proud of y'all. Like, we got beat by this team by 30 the first time, lose to them by 20 the second, and now the third time we're within striking distance where they're scared out of their minds that they're about to get upset by us. Y'all worked for that. Like, I don't take any of that credit. That was y'all. And we're just glad that y'all had that experience, and that put a fire under them to want to be better by the time they got to senior high,
Yeah, absolutely. That when you can instill that, when you can instill that in your kids, then I think you've really accomplished something. So you said that you've coached now with 5 different head coaches in 5 years. So obviously you only spent 1 year with Wendell. So what happens at the end of that year to get you to another head coach?
he knew I was looking for a head job. I've been wanting a head job since the day I got out of college, but I knew that wasn't realistic. And so I'd applied for a bunch, got a few more interviews. I'd actually turned one down that he thought I would take. And then, Paul Johnston called me. He was my athletic director at Bald Knob High School where I went, and his son was actually on my Pee Wee team. And he was like, "Are you at coaching clinic?" And I said, "Yes, sir." He said, "Why don't you come have dinner with me?" So we go have dinner. We're talking, and he's like, "I need you to take this assistant job." And I was like, "Coach, I have no desire to teach math. Like, teach 3 PE classes right now. I can focus on basketball." And he was like, "Here's the situation." The coach, my head coach at that time that I ended up going to work for was a great guy. He ended up having a situation that just wasn't very positive in the people's image, and it's not in anyone's image. It just kind of sucked. But he was more like, "Look, if something happens and the coach doesn't get to keep his job, I need someone I can trust to run the team for that year as an interim, and then you can fight for the head coaching job." And I said, "Coach, I'm not coming in there to try to undercut a coach or anything like that." And he was like, No. He's like, "We're fighting for him to stay as the head coach, but other things are coming into play that we might not be able to control. So if anything, I don't want someone I don't know. I can't have that, especially with this type of team coming back." And I told him a long time ago when I was in college, if that job ever comes open, I want the head coaching job, because they were just a talent pool over there. And so I told him after that, we talked about it, and I talked to Wendell about it, and he was just like, "Look, you're going to love the basketball everywhere you go. You're going to love the kids. Move for other reasons aside from basketball." He's like, "If you like the area there better," which was an hour from where I went to college, he's like, "If you like that better, if your lifestyle's better, then do it for that, because you're a guy that loves kids. And so wherever you go, the kids are going to be the same. You're going to love all the kids. So don't stay here because of the kids. Don't take another assistant job or turn down another assistant job because of the kids." And I was like, I can agree with that. And so I ended up going over there and working for Coach Clay, who ends up actually keeping his job, thankfully, because, when I got there, I could see, he was hard-nosed. He was on the kids. We were in the Delta, and those kids, if they didn't have any discipline, who knows what could have happened with those kids. And then the environment in that city that they lived in wasn't a great environment for them. It was a lot of gangs and drugs and things like that going on, to where they needed a guy like Coach Clay. And he did a great job of keeping the kids in check, disciplining them, holding everyone accountable, and being a professional himself and setting an example for these kids. And so, I was happy to go work for him. And then at the end of that year, he ended up saying, "I think I'm done. I think I'm just going to stick with admin now. I think it's time to hand over the reins." He wrote a letter of recommendation for me to get the head coaching job. So that was, my year with him. And, I had a great time with that.
And so when he recommended you to get the head job, then how did that scenario play out from there?
So when he recommended me, my AD had just gotten a raise to move over to principal, because he did such a good job as an AD. Our new superintendent wanted him as principal. New superintendent had heard of me as an assistant because of my AD. And at that time, I'm trying to show that I can run the program, I can do this. So I've got the kids going to team camp. I'm practicing the kids every day. Like, I'm acting like I'm the head coach, even though we don't have one and I have no idea what's going on. I'm calling for purchase orders to pay for the meals, pay for team camps, and I'm doing everything. I've finally I've reached out to probably 15 to 20 coaches, Greg White being one included, about what I need to do for an interview for this big of a job. What do I need to have? And I end up making a notebook, and I end up going to Outback Steakhouse, sitting there for 2.5 hours, typing up a notebook and a plan for every month, for every week, of what we needed to do to get better to where I wanted. Like, I wanted to put in run and jump. I wanted to put in dribble drive, when that needed to be plugged in, when I wanted my sets plugged in, when I wanted, any kind of play calls, anything I wanted, where I wanted it, and when, and what timeline. And I'd had all that. Then my parent contract, my student contract, GPA requirements were in there, everything about the NCAA clearinghouse, anything that you can imagine that a program needs, I had made my own. I'd looked on the internet, I'd taken things from different places, built my own, and I came in with about 6 notebooks laminated, everything looking nice, crisp, sharp, and handed it to every single person in there and said, hey, here's what I'm about. Here's the players we have coming back. Here's their strengths. Here's his weaknesses. Here's who's coming up from 9th and 8th grade that could help eventually. I mean, I had a whole scout on the school. And then I even had a scout on the superintendent. I went and found out about him. And just to kind of figure out his background to say, hey, this is how much research I'm doing.
And so you go in with all that, and what happens? What's the result of the hiring process?
There were so many rumors swirling around. I'd already made so many coaching friends, so I had people calling me left and right, telling me they heard this, they heard that. I'm stressed out to the max about it because I want it. And then the new principal, Coach Johnston, who was my AD, calls me and says, hey, we hired a guy out of North Little Rock High School. He was the assistant there. He said if he turned it down, it was your job. But this guy comes in with 4 out of the last 6 state titles and having coached high majors and been in the game for 13, 14 years. Well, at that time, just like any competitor, I'm a little stubborn about the loss and I want to leave. The first instinct is, hey, find me a head coaching job, get out of here, go find something, start my own program, and prove them wrong. And then he told me, he's like, look, I know you want to leave. Before I could even tell him, I said, I know you want to leave. Talk to the head coach. I think you'll like him. So, I already think it looks bad if I leave a place in 1 year of being there. So I said, okay, coach, I will give this a chance. But I'm still applying for jobs. He said, all right, that's fair. And so then here comes Nathan Claiborne. That's who ends up getting the job. And I asked some people around him, and some people have heard him, said, hey, he's good. He did the defense at North Little Rock, this and that. And so I was like, okay, I'll give him a shot. And so I eventually reached out to him and said, coach, I'm your assistant right now. I'd love to meet you. Well, we show up to the school and we meet up and we sit down in the office. He's like, tell me everything that's wrong with the program. Tell me everything I need to know. And he's like, tell me about this notebook. And so I go into the whole spiel about what can be fixed, what needs to be better about our kids, about the culture that's here and what needs to be better about our culture, and kind of give him that and tell him what my role have been the last 3 years. And then he comes out of nowhere, and this is what shocks me. This was really one of the selling points. He's like, do you like offense or defense better? I said, honestly, in my opinion, I am an offensive-minded person. I don't care if this sounds cocky or not. I was like, I think I'm one of the best X's and O's guy around the state. Like, that's my opinion. I'm not being cocky, but I'm also being confident in my ability. And he was like, okay, I love defense. You're going to run the entire offense from what we run: man, zone, sideline, baseline, press break. It's all you. You're the offensive coordinator. And I said, coach, you don't have to do that. You don't even know me. And he was like, no, but I've heard everything about you in the interview, and they raved about you. I asked a few other people that I know, and they've all said good things, so I don't think I'm going to give the offense in the wrong hands. And anything I don't like, we'll talk about it, we'll adjust. So then he's like, bring me back the offense that you want to run tomorrow or the next day. I said, okay. So I'm getting stuff together. I'm trying to impress the new head coach. If he's going to give me this responsibility, I'm going to make sure I get to keep it. Well, I go up to him and I said, hey, you like blackjack? And he said, I do. I like to gamble a lot. And I was like, all right, so let me explain dribble drive versus blackjack. And so I was asking him if he would hit a 16 on a 15. And he said, no. I said, why? He's like, the odds are against you. You have less chance of getting anything that's going to help. I said, all right, that's what I think about the mid-range jumper. I said, I don't want us shooting a single mid-range all year. And he said, I coached Kayvon Allen, who's at Florida, and he was the mid-range king. You're telling me you're not going to let him shoot mid-range. I said, coach, if Kayvon Allen played for me, he'd probably averaged 4 more points on probably 3 less shots. I was like, that's how bad the mid-range is. So I go into the math of it. I'm showing him dribble drive. He's never ran it. They run a 4-out ball screen offense. And so I'm showing him a whole new offense, and he's like, I think I'm going to like that. I said, it's fast-paced. We want to get on traps. We want to take efficient shots. We want layups, free throws, threes. And so he 100% the whole year backed me on everything. I mean, if a kid shot a mid-range, no matter what, if the kid shot a mid-range, they had 10 push-ups until we got out of them. And so then we were shooting threes, layups, or free throws. I showed a clip in an interview of our kid getting an offensive rebound, not having the layup, dribbling back out and then finding the three so we could shoot the three instead of the mid-range that was wide open on the rebound he got. And you can start seeing it coming into play. And at that point, he was one of my favorite people to work for. And me and him got along in every aspect of coaching and philosophy. And then he had learned things from me. I had learned things from him. He had taught me more about relationships with kids and how not to just lose my cool on certain situations, but how to negate situations more or less. So that was a whole different experience for me. That was the most fun experience I've had in my years of coaching.
That's an awesome story, just from a standpoint of, here's a guy that, it's a credit to both of you. It's a credit to him from a standpoint of, here he comes in, and there's a guy who's, wanted that head coaching job, and obviously could have been bitter, and could have been, you could have been a guy that, he didn't know you, so you could have been somebody who would be disloyal. He had nothing, and yet he put that trust in you based on, recommendations from other people and just his own intuition, and then gives you all that responsibility, which helps you to grow and be respected and valued as an assistant. And then from your perspective, I think it shows a tremendous amount of character that you were able to put your feelings aside, because, again, anybody who's coached and been an assistant and been up for a head job that they really wanted and then didn't get it, you tend to be a little bit upset about that. You really feel like, again, we all have confidence in ourselves and believe that we can be the right person for the job. And then when you didn't get it, I think it speaks a lot to the type of person that you are, that you were able to, see beyond that, give the new guy a chance, and then it turned out to be a great experience. So I love that story, Monty. It's just a great story.
And and I was telling this story to one of our coaches here at North Little Rock. I was telling him, I was like, look, I even gained more respect for Coach Claiborne when in the first game we're coaching at a tournament. It's about to be the end of the quarter. We're trying to get the last shot, and before Coach could even say anything, I yell out our quick hitter that I thought would work perfectly. He looks at me. I look at him. I was like, "Oh God, he's about to drill me. Like he's the he's the head coach." He looks at me. He goes, "Dive, run, dive." And I was like, "Oh, so he's really gonna let me call this?" So we run it. We get the three. We drill it. And I was like, "Oh," And then after the game, I said, "Hey, Coach, thanks for backing me on things." He's like, "What are you thanking me for? You're the offensive coordinator. This is what you're supposed to do." And so from then on out, during the middle of the game, he'd be hollering out defense stuff, offensive time. I'd be hollering out offensive stuff. And then, the second test came where, as an assistant, you're supposed to be in your coach's ear just giving suggestions. I told him, you'll hear me give you a lot of suggestions, throw out whatever, use whatever. It's not going to hurt my feelings none. And we're tied up. There's 3 seconds left. Sideline out of bounds play, and I just tell Coach, I got something if you need it. Simple as that. Don't want, not trying to draw attention. I'm sure he has something too. He goes, "Here," and I look, and he's handing me the clipboard. I was like, "Oh, you're really going to give me this for the game winner?" And I literally dropped this hitter. I dropped this sideline out of bounds that I had from window back in the day that we just hadn't put in, and our kid gets a chance at the layup and just misses the layup short. And I'm sitting here thinking, man, if you make this layup, I'm looking like a freaking hero right now. And you just score. But we go into overtime. I think we end up actually losing in the third overtime of that game. Or no, we won. It was a home game. We won that game. But I even said it to Coach Claiborne again. Man, you didn't have to give me that. He was like, "You said you had something. Why am I not going to give it to you?" And I was like, "Man, you crazy." That's literally what I said to him. I was like, "If I'm the head coach, I don't know if I could even put my ego aside enough to say, hey, you call the defense on this." Like, that's something that it taught me. And then he always said, "Look, you're not going to have any fun as an assistant, and neither will your assistant in the future if you're not giving him a bunch of responsibility. Like, it's just not fun being in that business." So I'm glad that you learned that from me. I was like, hey, when I get an assistant coach, he's going to have a lot more responsibility than he probably wants.
Yeah, I think as an assistant coach, I spent actually 13 years as an assistant varsity coach, and most of those with the same head coach. And I think that your point that you make there is really key, in that when the head coach gives the assistant coach responsibility, it just it just enhances the whole. One, enhances the relationship between the head coach and the assistant. Two, it also gives the players a window into the fact that, the assistant has some authority and knowledge and some ability to, impact the team. And it's just, I just think it's something that every head coach should do, but as we all know, unfortunately, not every head coach does approach it that way. And Coach Claiborne sounds like just an amazing guy in terms of his ability to sort of let go of some of the things that he was able to let you, grab a hold of.
Oh, and like I told him, at the end of the year, it was crazy. He's the defensive coordinator. I'm the offensive coordinator. We're good on our roles now. We're very comfortable with each other, and we're trying to figure out how to beat one of the teams in our conference. And I was like, Coach, this might legit sound crazy. I think we go triangle too. And he was like, I ain't ever run that stuff in my life. I was like, Coach, you've always had players. We do have some players here, but we don't have those type of players you have. He literally switches the game plan. We're triangle and two, and we're playing man and one defense. I don't know that many people that have ever heard of the man and one, but we had it run against us earlier in that year. And so I was like, I think these two will throw off the team that we're playing, that I think we can stay competitive with them and maybe get out the win. And so we practiced on this for a week, and we're playing in the state tournament against this team, and we knew we'd match up to them. And after the first quarter, we're triangle and two, we're down 3. And Coach looks at me, he was like, all right, this is going good. But the guys that are running around that are the 2, they're tired. We need to give them a breather. And my scout for that game, I literally got every film that I could from everyone in the conference on the team we played. I went and looked at all their three-point shooters, who took the most shots, what their percentages were, and I had note cards on the bench with who was the highest percentage shooters and what numbers, so we could triangle them out the game, or we could two them out the game. And we're doing that, and we start the second quarter, we're like, we'll give them a minute, and they're going to have to get back in. And in that minute, we lost their shooters that on my percentage card said they were 40% three-point shooters, and they go on a 9-0 run, and next thing you know, we're down 13. Never got back in it. And we were just like, it worked, but we just didn't have the horses.
Understood. Yeah, sometimes you throw a junk defense out there, and a team just is, you can confuse them for a while. They don't know what they don't know what they're supposed to run, and is this man, is it zone, and they're trying to figure it out. And so I think there's definitely a place for that in the high school game, that it can be effective on a one-game basis where team's not prepared for it, for sure.
Especially for us, everyone knew we were manning and we were running and jumping, everything. And then all of a sudden you come out in the triangle too, and we're like, he hasn't worked on this. No one can expect that. And so then how are they going to adjust? But, that game still leaves me scars, because we could have beat them. We could have.
Yeah, those the losses definitely stick with you. I think one of the things that I always say for both my playing career and my coaching career is, the games that are the most memorable for me, the ones that burn in my head are definitely the losses. Because, I think if you're a successful player or coach, you end up winning quite a few of your games, and so the losses are maybe fewer and farther between, and yet those are the ones that stick with you and that you really tend to remember.
Oh, that one's going to stick with me for a long time.
So then year 4 ends. What happens at that point, where Coach Claiborne now is you're no longer with him? What transpires at the end of that year?
So me and Coach Claiborne both probably February, March. We're talking. His wife got a great job back in Little Rock, where they were from. Now she's the breadwinner of the family, and he's like, I can't stay. And I'm thinking, okay. But there was a lot of other factors that were going on with the new administration that I was on the same boat with him. I don't want to be here that much either. I'm ready for a head coaching job, but not here. And so he looks into his old job, the exact job he was in, opens up. So he knows he's home. He knows he's back at North Little Rock at probably the best high school in the state, top 3 for sure. And he's back there. And me, I've applied and interviewed. I think I had 8 interviews this year, and got 0 offers for a head coaching job. Got 1 offer for an assistant job that I felt was offered too early to me. that I gambled on myself finding something better as a head coach or closer to my parents as an assistant. And I wanted to take the assistant job that was offered because the AD was a good friend. The head coach was Claiborne's friend, and Claiborne told him all the things I did for him, and he just got the job because the basketball coach went to being the AD. So they wanted me there, and I knew the job was mine if I wanted it. And I ended up having to turn him down, which, I avoided the phone call with the new AD for about a month, and then kind of called him, let him cool off. And he told me he was mad a little bit, but he understood. So still a good reference for me.
Let's take a quick break and hear from our sponsor, Alan Stein Jr.
Hello, Hoop Heads. This is Alan Stein Jr. My new book, Raise Your Game, High Performance Secrets from the Best of the Best, will be available from all major book retailers on January 8th. Raise Your Game takes a rare peek behind the curtain and shows you what the top coaches and players in the game do during the unseen hours. I share their routines, rituals, and habits, as well as proven strategies that you can implement with your team immediately. If you want to maximize your coaching impact and influence, order your copy today at raiseyourgamebook.com.
But then, I got to talking to people, and they're like, no one's seen an Indian head coach, or no one's ever seen an Indian assistant. You're in Arkansas. And I'm like, yeah, what's that matter? And he was like, no one knows how to take you. He's like, you are a country boy from Ball Knob, an Indian country. And I was like, that has nothing to do with nothing. He's like, no, people are going to look at that. And I was like, I don't know. And so then I start thinking about it, and then my buddy gets in my head, and then I'm like, no one does know how to take me. Do I fit into a predominantly African-American school? Do I fit into a predominantly Caucasian school? The first school I coached at was half Hispanic. So, I kind of fit in there, but I'm still not Hispanic. So I'm sitting here thinking, maybe this is one of the problems. Maybe no one knows how to take me. Maybe I need to get out of Arkansas in general. I have a buddy that's coaching at Baylor. He's an Indian guy, and he's told me, some of the problems he had when he was first getting into the business. And now he's one of the assistants at Baylor. And so I'm like, there's at least hope for me. But in Arkansas, I would probably put every life earning that I have that I am the only or probably the first Indian coach in this state. I would put every bit of money I've ever earned on that. And so it was just crazy to think about it that way,
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think if you look across the basketball landscape, regardless of where you are, I think you see, relatively few Indian players, coaches. You just don't see it. And so I think it's just like anything. You sort of have to, be that pioneer, and people tend to hire what they're familiar with. And so I think you bring up a good point that they're just not maybe familiar with seeing someone of Indian descent who is a basketball coach. It's just not something that's common. And as a result, it takes somebody who has a little bit of maybe courage to give someone an opportunity that doesn't fit the stereotypical profile of what a basketball coach might look like.
I mean, I'd talk to my parents about going into coaching, which that was a harder conversation because they're, Indian. My parents moved over from India, didn't know English, don't know anything about the culture here in America. They're living in a hotel room, working their way up in the world, and they don't want me to live in poverty because they have done it. Like my mom lived in a house of 8 brothers and sisters that had 2 bedrooms. And so she's trying to make a better living here in the States. And so they know, coaches and teachers don't make enough money to be happy. And then they also know that their son likes to spend money. So they're like, go together. And, and I tell my parents, there's, coaches make good money if you get to the right spot, and you've got to be good at it. And, I want to be good at it. But, pharmacy just never interested me. I used to want to be a pediatrician when I was a kid and then grew out of that pretty quick. And so sports was just something I just fell in love with and I wanted to be a part of the rest of my life. So I was like, this will make me happy and I will figure the rest of this stuff out. But if I take a job for money, there's not a good chance I'm going to be happy about it for the rest of my life.
Yeah, I think you definitely want to make sure that you're finding the right thing. And it's interesting, again, you may not fit the stereotypical profile, but obviously all of us make decisions in our life about what we're going to do and where we're going to end up. And no matter what you do, there's trade-offs. But I think ultimately you have to find the things that are, that are satisfying to you. And one of the things that I hear you say, and it's coming through loud and clear, is just the fact that you, love your players and the kids that you're getting an opportunity to coach. And then 2, just how passionate you are about coaching and the game itself. And I think that comes through loud and clear. And ultimately, that to me is what it's all about. If you're passionate about the game and you're passionate about the kids you're coaching, then to me that's a person that is ready for success.
And I'm hoping eventually those qualities end up coming out to other people and they see that, and like that's why my next move was just kind of out of nowhere, because I'm not getting the opportunities that I wanted. There was a few head jobs. Some I know were unrealistic, but at least an interview experience, and I would have been even content with that in some of the bigger schools. And, putting down my references and having good references call around, like big coaches in the state that people know. And, I am in Omaha, Nebraska, watching the Hogs, which we don't have to talk about that national championship game, but watching them, and Coach Claiborne calls me, and he's got his job back at North Little Rock, and he's been there about a week or two, and he's like, look, I can get you on here. And I said, if you can get me on, I'm coming. And I was already in the midst of working into Springdale junior high head coach, and that was in Northwest Arkansas, would have been in Greg's conference as a junior high, if I'm not mistaken. And working in that interview, but that interview's taken such a long time because they have such a long process. And then Claiborne's like, look, I got this going, and Coach Rice, who's the head coach, he's going to make this call to the principal, and then you just got to interview for it. And then more or less you can land it because you can teach math. And I said, okay, take your word for it. Well, while in Omaha, I ended up having to do a phone interview. And I told the principal, like, hey, if I need to fly down, I'll get a flight from here, whatever it is, to get this job. She was like, look, I don't have to see you as a physical human being to know if you're a candidate for this job or not. So don't worry about that. She's like, we can do it over Skype or over a phone call or whatever, that we can. And I'd applied for the job about 3 months ago, but they didn't call. So I was, I told Claiborne I didn't think he had enough pull there. But really, the application got lost on the computer. So she'd never seen it, or she said I would have got hired months ago. And so next thing you know, I did this phone interview for about 45 minutes, and about 3 hours later, before we're about to head out to watch the Hogs do what they do, which isn't win, and I get offered the job. And so I immediately take it on the phone. And about 20 minutes later, Springdale calls and said they went a different direction. So it just worked out perfectly, because I was going to call them and pull my name out of the hat respectfully, but they'd already made their decision on which way they wanted to go. So then I didn't have to let them down, and I had me a job. So now I'm excited because North Little Rock has, won the last 4 out of 6 state titles. Coach Rice knows everybody in the state, and everyone knows who he is. So his word carries a lot of weight. And he knew what I wanted, and I was looking for a head coaching job, whether it be next year, year after, whatever. But now being at this school, I felt that, I could be a little pickier and not go into a situation that isn't conducive to wanting to build a good basketball program.
So now as you go into this season, what is your role looking like in terms of what you're going to be doing as an assistant this year?
Well, so Claiborne's back on the defense. Coach Rice likes the offensive side. And so more or less I'm doing a lot of the scouting, the film, and then, just little stuff here and there. Like Coach lets me, holler at the kids about anything. He wants me to fix whatever. And, I float between each side. Sometimes I'll be hollering at the defense. Sometimes I'll be hollering at the offense. So I get to play both sides. Claiborne told me since I was a bad cop at Marion, he's the bad cop at North Little Rock, and he's had that reputation. So don't come in trying to be the bad cop because he's already got it. So I'm the positive, someone's down, high five, give them a hug, talk it out, make sure they're all right, and then still stay on their butt and make sure they're doing what they need to do. And then, in 7A, they do things a little differently. So we also have our 9th grade in the building. And so I'm an assistant to the 9th grade. I'm assistant to senior high. And whenever senior high and 9th grade play on the same day, I go with the 9th grade just because I don't want Coach Balan by himself. So I make sure I just go with him just so he has someone to bounce ideas off of, because I know what it's like to be by myself on the bench. I wouldn't want another coach to do that. So I told him, whatever games, I'll come there. And so he's telling me, hey, you run the offense. Like, this is what you and Nate did. I've never had someone help me, so you do it. And so now he called me yesterday, and he was like, this is what we're going to do. I want you to put in this. I want you to put in this. And now that, I'm comfortable with his kids, because I'm not actually in the 9th grade period, so I do morning workouts with them just so I can get to know them. He's like, you put in this stuff before the game. We'll talk about it, and then we'll practice it after I see it, and, the kids see it. I said, that's fair. So now I just float back and forth wherever I'm needed, and then on the bench for 9 through 12. So now more people get to see me coaching. I get to meet more people. I get to see more kids. So it's even more exciting because now I'm out Monday, Tuesday, Thursdays, Fridays, and then every other Saturday from what the schedule looks like. I think the only off days I have is Sunday and Wednesdays.
Yeah, it's a great – I think, despite the fact that you haven't gotten that head coaching position that you're looking for, it sounds like, based on the description of the two guys that you're getting an opportunity to work with, it doesn't sound like it gets much better than Coach Rice and Coach Claiborne as far as, being able to learn from some of the best in the business and being able to really sit down and pick their brain and go through a season with them. I got to believe that it's going to be a tremendous, growth opportunity, learning opportunity for you to continue to grow yourself as a coach.
And, in talking to these guys and being around them, I can see why North Little Rock wins. And I understand you have to have dudes that can play like that. That's a given. You have to have players. But, I'm looking around at practice. We have a pretty solid team this year, but it's not like one of those North Little Rock teams that they've recently had. They don't have those 3-4 high major guys. They have one and then a couple fringe guys. And you could still see that the culture they set, where these guys are competing, they're fighting, offense, defense, fighting for spots, everything, first team, second team, and yet they're helping each other up. They're loving on each other. They're making sure they're all good. No one's, you don't see fights. You don't see them arguing, which is something different, because at the other school I was at, kids always went at each other because it was, which side of town did you live on? What gang are you affiliated with? I don't like you because of this. I don't like you because of this color, that color. And he took all that out when he got the head coaching job there, and you could tell that culture's been built. I looked around at our town, and I told Coach Balan, the 9th grade coach, just yesterday, I said, I would bet there's probably 3 or 4 kids walking around the high school right now that could take starting spots that just can't act right to be on this team. And he literally said this kid just walked by about 6'5", that could start, probably play D1. He has no idea, but he just can never get it together. No, we got rid of him. And it doesn't hurt our feelings none, because we have this culture set. Why would we want to ruin that? We won 4 out of 6, and there's probably guys here in that past time that could have played and taken spots that just didn't know how to act and didn't want to carry themselves in a standard that is represented by a basketball team. And so it makes me respect what a good culture does for you.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's one of the things that high school coaches today, I think, have a harder time. I think it's more of a struggle sometimes to be able to cut bait with a guy who's super talented and a kid that might be able to help you win in the long term, in the short term, but in the long term, you're sacrificing, those pieces of your culture that are important. And I think what coaches should remember is that it's important to make sure that you're looking at the long-term health of your program and that you're establishing what it is that you want your culture to be. And if you have somebody that maybe is talented but doesn't fit that culture for whatever reason, whether it's, choices of things they're doing off the floor or grades or just, they're not a good teammate, whatever the case may be, I think you're better off biting that bullet early and, cutting that kid off the team as opposed to keeping somebody around who doesn't fit your culture. How do you feel about that, or how do you approach that?
And I agree with you. And the bad part is, Arkansas is such a small state in terms of basketball and hoops and the talent. But then, I've been at the small school. The schools I've been at were 3A, 6A to 7A. In the 3A school, if you have a stud, and I mean a D1 stud, that's pretty much taking you to a state championship or on a good run. And then if he's not a good kid, do you sacrifice your chance as a state champion? Do you sacrifice your chance at maybe if your aspirations are to move up, getting rid of this kid to prove a point, or do you find a way to deal with it and find a way to manage it so you can do that and then you can make a better life for yourself? Because, I mean, I understand everyone's in it for the kids, and I get that and I respect that. That's one reason I'm in it. But at the same time, everyone's got to bring food home to the table, and you're trying to work your way up the system just as much. So if you sacrifice that, do you sacrifice yourself out of a job? Do you sacrifice yourself from, a kid like Austin Reeves? He's a good kid from everything I've heard. He went to Wichita State. He's in 3A, averaging 50 through the state tournament. That's not an exaggeration, 50. If that kid's a turd and you kick him off, that team, Cedar Ridge, probably wins 5 games in the whole year compared to going through the state championship 2 years in a row and getting it. And then that coach being called for other head coaching jobs. So, which one do you want? Do you want the job, or are you perfectly happy sacrificing your wins and that, or how do you find a way to manage it?
And so what's your thought, on that? I guess I would say that it really, if you're going to, it depends to some degree how long you're planning to stay at that school. But I think ultimately, if you're going to build your culture, I think you have to err on the side of what's best for, the long-term health of your program. And I still think that, if you have a kid that doesn't fit what you want to do in your program, you're better off removing that kid early, despite whatever their talent might be.
I think if you're a good coach and you come in and say I get a head coaching job, the first instance of trouble we had, if I overreact a little bit, maybe not kicking the kid off, but overreact in terms of a punishment, then maybe at that time, all the other kids will say, he's not messing around with any of us. And so he will do what it takes to create the right culture and what he wants the players to be. But, if you try to adjust your philosophy for that kid, you're going to end up hurting the program in the long run. But, a lot of coaches don't want to admit it. And like I say, I'm an open book. I'm an honest person. I'm realistic about these things. There's coaches out there that are worried about what head coaching job are they getting next. This might be a pit stop, but they knew they lucked out into running into maybe having a Malik Monk, an Austin Reeves, an Archie Goodwin, or whoever, one of these high major players that have come through this state. Do you get rid of them if they're acting crazy, acting, not in a manner that's conducive to your culture, and then cost yourself a better job? You can go from making $45,000 to $65,000 at a snap of a finger at a bigger school here. So which one, what do you do? In my opinion, I think if I came in right now as a head coach, I would set a standard, hard-nosed the first couple months and then ease up on the kids later. But I'd let them know, hey, we're going to act this way. We're going to do these things, and I'm about it. Because as soon as you're not about it, the kids are going to be able to figure that out. They figure it out the quickest.
Yeah, if you're not genuine and you're not doing the things that you truly believe in, kids have a pretty good nose for that, and they're able to sniff you out if you're not being genuine and you're not really, living true to what it is that you are as a person and that you are as a coach. I agree with you 100% on that one. So as you look at where you are in your career at this point, what are some of the things that obviously you're focused on your season this year and you're committed to what you're doing, but I'm sure in the back of your mind, you're still preparing for the opportunity that you're going to have at some point in the future to be a head coach. So what are some of the things that you're doing through the course of time to sort of prepare? And just, again, you made your notebook, in preparation for the interview, earlier in your career. And I'm sure you're doing those same things to get yourself prepared to get a head job in the future. What are some of those things you're doing?
Well, like right now, I think a big part of it is just making connections for me. Now I'm at a new level. I'm at 7A, so I get to meet all these 7A coaches and make a good impression on them, whether it be film exchange, talking to them before a game, just getting to know people and letting them know who I am. I want a head coaching job as bad as the next guy. But now that I've been at North Little Rock, I see the culture. I see that it's so stress-free in terms of like headaches from kids causing problems. But, I wouldn't mind being here 3-4 years, because then, I've talked to, the ninth grade coach and, even Coach Claiborne about this. They've got offered jobs plenty of times, good ones at that. Why didn't they take them? And they said, look, would I rather keep winning here or go to a place that it might seem great on the outside and then on the inside it's terrible? And it's like, if I just keep working my way up here, maybe I'll have a chance at the head job. Maybe I'll just be the main assistant here. But at the end of the day, I want to be happy, and I don't want a headache coming home from work every single day, because you're talking about kids' lives, and no one wants to ruin a kid's life over, basketball and taking them out and kicking them off the team and things like that. And, I agree with them. And then the other situation is, my parents, they're here. And so now it's like my parents getting older. I'm getting that put into perspective for me. They're not getting any younger. I'm home. I get to coach at one of the best schools in the state. So what's my rush going to be? So unless I find a job that I know wants to win, wants to build the right program, can be a winning place, and I can create it into a winning place, I don't know if I even want to leave.
Yeah, I totally understand. I think the opportunity to be close by to your family, I think the opportunity when you have a good situation, it's one of the things that I kind of go back to my own coaching career, and I'll share just a little bit of a story there on that. When I came out of school, and I had 2 job offers. One was to be a varsity assistant coach at the school district that I'm at currently, and then I also had an opportunity at a different school district to be the head varsity coach, but the only position they had was a study hall monitor, so it was a part-time hourly position. And so I had to make a decision between being a varsity assistant and having a full-time teaching job, or going and getting the head job and being a study hall monitor. And I debated that hard for probably 2 weeks, probably longer than I'm sure both sides wanted to let it drag out. But I ultimately ended up choosing the teaching job and the assistant varsity coach. And then what happened was I became really good friends with my head coach, and then also our JV coach was hired in the same year, and the 3 of us were together for 13 years. And if you'd have told me when I first took that job that I was going to be a varsity assistant coach for the next 13 years, I would have told you were crazy, because my ambition was to go and have my own program and be able to be a head coach. And to your point, I got in a situation with a couple of great guys that I really liked. I enjoyed the process of working with them and spending time with them, and being at practice and being on the bus and sitting in the coach's office after practice and just talking basketball, talking life. And as a result of that, I really never went out and pursued these other jobs, because it ended up being a job that I really enjoyed. And so I think there's something to be said for being in a place where you can be successful, where you're surrounded by other people that are good coaches that are doing things the right way. And it's a bonus to have your parents close by, so you can continue to see them, especially again as parents get older. You want to be able to spend some time with them. So I think you're in a good spot where you'll be able to make a decision. If you decide to leave, you can leave for the right reasons, to take over the right kind of program.
And I agree with you on that. My perspective has changed so much in 4 years, going into being in my 5th now, of wanting to rush to be a head coach, to now, what is the best situation? What is going to make me happy? And what is going to make me enjoy every single day? Because, there hasn't been a day here at North Little Rock I've been miserable going into practice or having to deal with anything. Even as the head coach, Coach Rice, Coach Claiborne, Coach Ballon, they don't even have to deal with anything for the most part. And anything they have to deal with has been so microscopic that, for what I've seen, and so I'm just thinking, why would I want to be in a hurry to get out of here? And then with them calling, people will talk, and people will call him, and he will be able to tell them good things about me, hopefully, and that goes on to get me the job that I want and the job that is right for me over the job that I would have just taken on the first offer.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm sure if you'd have gotten a job offer after year one, you would have been much less discriminating than you're going to be at this point, which is going to end up with you being in the right spot, whatever that right spot might be. And like you said, you might be there where you are for the next 3, 4, 5 years. Or, maybe next year you get an opportunity that turns out to be a good one. It sounds like, again, like I said earlier, that you're surrounded by a great staff, and that I think when you're surrounded by a great staff, it's going to give you more and more opportunities to just learn from them, to be able to continue to grow yourself as a coach. And one of the things that I've learned over the course of time that, again, if you'd asked me when I was 23, I would have told you I knew just about everything there was to know about coaching. And now at age 48, I feel like there's so little that I actually know, and that there's so much out there to learn. And so I think if you put yourself in position to continue to grow, the right opportunity is going to come. The right opportunity is going to come for you. One question I have for you is, your mom and dad, obviously, when they came here from India, they didn't really have any interest or knowledge about the game of basketball. So where are they today in terms of, do they come to games to watch you coach? Do they get to know your players? Or are they still kind of hands off and not involved in your coaching career at all?
So my first year, my parents drove the 2.5 hours from where they lived to watch my first game. We won it on a buzzer beater. They were excited for me. They loved it. They loved seeing me happy. And, and then whenever I invite them to the games, they'll take time out of their day to come. I know they don't understand the game, that, nothing like even a casual viewer would, but they enjoy seeing me. They enjoy seeing me in my element. And, right now, as an assistant and whatnot, I invite my parents to come watch the games, but they're not the type to get invested like that. But, I feel like if I ever get a head coaching job and if they're there, then, I can get them to want to be invested into that. Like, hey, these are my kids. These are, this is what I'm considering my family. And, y'all are my family, and I want to mix these. I want them to just know where I grew up, and that, y'all went through some of the things that they might be going through, and I've done the same. But, they're very supportive. They don't say anything, tell me about anything about, hey, you're not making enough, you're not this, you're not that. They're all, my parents, they help me right now figure out my master's classes, and I'm about to be that.
What are you getting your master's in?
I'm doing educational leadership so I can find a principal job eventually, or an assistant with the coaching.
Yep, understood. So your dad doesn't call you up and tell you ran the wrong out of bounds play at the end of the game?
My dad couldn't tell you what out of bounds. He couldn't. And like my dad, he just got back from India last night. He went down there for 3 weeks. And I'm just in here talking to him, and I'm like, man, like, you've always talked about you want to go to Fayetteville. I said, I might have tickets to the Razorback game Sunday. And Dad couldn't even imagine what a Razorback game is. Like, he has no idea. He just knows that, the Razorbacks are in Arkansas. But I just want to see his face when he goes to Bud Walton Arena for the first time, where right now the Hogs are 1-1, and we think that we'd be all right, that the stadium will be packed to where Dad will be in this whole different atmosphere that he's never been a part of. And I would just love to have that, father-son time. But then my dad's the same dude that says, hey, your job allows you to do things like relax, where, your relaxing is teaching and your relaxing is coaching. He's like, my relaxing is legit sitting on the couch because I have to do manual labor every single day, because my dad pushed education so hard on me because he dropped out in 6th grade in India. So, trying to get Dad to go do things 2.5 hours away is a little harder. So now I'm kind of being pushy about it. Like, hey, I want you to come see this. I want you to sit at a basketball game with me instead of you sitting there watching me coach. So it makes things a little different, and me trying to get them involved, just, and cherish all the time that, we do have together right now.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a lot of fun. And again, it's, you're in kind of a unique situation in that most people who grow up and end up being coaches have kind of had sports and the game of basketball or whatever sport they're coaching has been in their life for forever. And in a lot of cases, it was passed on, that love of sports or basketball was passed on from, a parent, more likely if you're a male coach, and is passed down from your dad. And the fact that you've kind of found this passion independent of your parents kind of makes your story a unique one. So I'm going to flip the question around on you here. And we kind of talked about your dad being out of his element in the basketball world. Have you been able to travel back to India in your life?
And I'll make this story quick. The first time I went was in kindergarten. I didn't have a choice. The second time I went was between 8th and 9th grade. Mom told me we were going for 2 weeks. Mom tricked me, so I was down there. So I literally go down to India, get 4 teeth extracted, and the first 2 that got extracted were without numbing medicine because they didn't do that in India unless you asked. So I had like a horse needle in my gums, and I'm crying, and then come back for my freshman year of high school with braces from India. Have not stepped foot in that country again.
Wow, that's crazy. That is crazy. Do your parents? How often do they go back without you now at this point?
They do. They try to go once every 2 years, something like that. Visit. We have a house there. My parents built one there. Land there. It was really good. It was a good business investment for them. But they're starting to wrap things up over there because both of my grandparents have passed away now for a couple of years. So, and then the rest of our family's in the States now. So we have nobody really there left. So they don't have really much of a reason to go back other than just visit, maybe old friends and things like that. But, Dad pretty much said that was the last time he plans on going, unless he plans on retiring there, which he really doesn't. And my mom, she's going to go back to finish a business venture down there for a couple of weeks in March. And then that might be the last time she probably goes too.
Yeah, I think it's one of the things that it's hard for somebody like myself to relate to. Being in a different culture. I think your parents, it's a credit to anybody who can leave their home country and go and immigrate to, again, wherever, not just necessarily the United States, but anybody who leaves their home and goes and tries to create a new life, a better life for themselves. I can only imagine how scary that process was for your parents.
And if we had a whole different type of podcast, I'd give you stories for hours that would make me cringe if I had to do.
Yeah, I can believe that. Again, to just come into a different culture and to be able to assimilate yourself and I'm sure, again, face difficulties from people who didn't treat you as well as you would have liked. I can only imagine what that would be like. So let's jump back from that heavier topic back into one more basketball related question, and let's just wrap this up by saying, what are some of the things that when you eventually do get your own program, what are some of the things that are going to be the pillars of what you're going to try to instill in eventually what's going to be your own high school program?
I've always said I wanted 3 things, and that would be academic. We have to be academically standing very, very well. I don't want to play kids that even have D's on their report card. And if I get that started early, then I don't have to worry about it later because I don't want to mess with a kid that's going to be borderline ineligible and then I just lose them. Then socially, the same way, I want to be able to do community service. I want our kids out. I want them to be seen. If the community sees them, they'll be more invested in coming into games. And then, basketball-wise, just playing the right way, playing for their teammates, playing for each other, not playing for themselves. I think the biggest compliment to a coach is when, you're losing by 20 or 30 and your kids are still battling the entire time. They don't give up. They don't put their heads down. They don't feel sorry for themselves. They play. And I think that's one of the biggest and ultimate compliments that a coach can get. And I've been in that situation and I felt like, my kids respected me enough to put themselves in that situation of battling, even though they knew they had no chance of coming back.
Yeah, I think that just what you talked about, a little bit earlier in the podcast about you coming in every day prepared and enthusiastic and ready to give your best regardless of what your record was and regardless of what your talent level is. Kids see that, and just from hearing you talk, I think you're going to be able to instill that when you do get your own program. I can see where those kids are going to come out and they're going to play hard and they're going to compete and they're going to do the things that you want them to do. And I love that you included the socially conscious part of going out and being in the community and doing good work. And I think one of the things that good coaches, especially good coaches today, are all about is it's about more than just basketball. It's about building those relationships. It's about giving back. It's about learning what it is to really be a citizen in today's society and how we can try to make the world around us a better place. And I think if you're gonna try to do that with your kids and your program, then you're going to have things definitely going on the right track. So I appreciate everything that you share with us tonight, Monty. Before we get out of here, is there anything else that we didn't hit on that you'd like to share before we ask you to share how people can get in touch with you?
Well, I do say this. I know I don't want to step back in India, but I did talk to my buddy at Baylor, and he told me about the NBA academy they have there. And, I have aspirations to be a high school coach, but, I do want to always move up. And college would be awesome experience, and I've thought about that, and I have friends doing that. And I've tried to reach out to the Grizzlies coach just in his DMs. Any assistant coach I've ever seen for an NBA team that has their DMs open, I try to slide in, introduce myself, and see if I can just get a lunch with them because, that'd be cool. I think it'd be fun. I think it'd be a good time. And I would love to be able to network and do those things and be able to say, hey, I went from a family who wanted me to be a doctor to being an NBA assistant coach or an NBA whatever or a college whatever, because I want to hold myself, why am I going to limit myself to high school? I'm single. I don't have kids. I don't have anything holding me back, and I love basketball enough. So why wouldn't I do that?
Yeah, that's the time. I will say, that's the time to do it. You hear stories all the time about, the guy who, was basically the volunteer assistant and was, cutting up film in the film room and doing that kind of thing. And then before you know it, he moves up and he moves up and he moves up. And certainly when you're young and you don't have kids, you don't have those extra responsibilities, that's the time to do it. And it speaks to one of the things that we've talked with a lot of coaches about, which is, building your network, especially when you're young. It sounds like you're definitely on the right track with that, because the more people you can introduce yourself to, the more people that you can put yourself in front of, eventually that'll be more people that can A, help you, and that B, who knows, maybe you might someday be in a position to be able to help somebody that, that you meet along the way. So we really appreciate you sharing that, Monty.
Well, I mean, like even this year, and I didn't get to mention that earlier, was when I couldn't find a coaching job at all to get out of where I was, I talked to the Arkansas State assistant coach, who's a good friend of mine, about not, being the volunteer guy. I had a buddy that was going to let me live at his house for free. He did well enough that, he trusts me to live there for free. Parents would have helped me with any kind of cost that I needed to have. It couldn't be any wants, but needed to have. And I was literally going to do anything they wanted me to. I told him, you could treat me as the number one manager, the number one GA, the number one whatever, and not pay me, and I will do it. And, we were trying to make that in the works, and it just didn't end up panning out. But, that kind of got my heart beating like, hey, I might want to pursue this. And, even talking to the guy at Baylor, he told me he could get me on as a GA, but the way they do GA is like they split the scholarship between 12 people, so it cost me $10,000-15,000 a year to be a GA. Well, financially, I couldn't afford that.
Yeah, it doesn't make much sense. Yeah.
So that's the fun stuff of it. That's the beauty of it. Hope I'll end up where I'm supposed to end up. I believe that for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, before we get out of here, Monty, can you share how people who've listened to the podcast can reach out to you, whether it's on social media or your email, and go ahead and share that out for people who want to reach out to you?
I have Twitter. That's one of my main outlets that I stay on for basketball. And so my Twitter name is Monty, Monty Patel. I'm the only one, apparently. So that's my Twitter handle. Coach Patel 928 at Gmail is my email. I made a separate account just for any kind of newsletters or anything that could come in there for basketball, just so I can keep that organized. And then, you can search me, Monty Patel, on Instagram or Facebook or any social media whatsoever. I'm on there because I know kids like to be on there and parents like to be on there and they want to see themselves on there. So I try to post about them and do those things to get them exposure, when they're ready for it.
Awesome, Monty. Thanks a lot for sharing. We really appreciate you jumping on with us tonight and staying up a little bit late and sharing your story. It was a really interesting story. Not many people have experienced the things that you've experienced, both from your unusual background and also then just your ability to kind of adjust to be a chameleon and work with all kinds of different coaches and learn at every stop along the way. And we wish you luck on your journey. We're going to continue to keep in touch with you, and we appreciate you jumping on. So to everyone out there, thanks for listening, and we'll catch you on our next episode. Thanks.
Today's episode of the Hoopheads Podcast is brought to you by Raise Your Game, the new book by Alan Stein Jr.
Hello, Hoopheads. This is Alan Stein Jr. My new book, Raise Your Game, High Performance Secrets from the Best of the Best, will be available from all major book retailers on January 8th. Raise Your Game takes a rare peek behind the curtain and shows you what the top coaches and players in the game do during the unseen hours. I share their routines, rituals, and habits, as well as proven strategies that you can implement with your team immediately. If you want to maximize your coaching impact and influence, order your copy today at raiseyourgamebook.com. And in the spirit of the holidays, if you're interested in purchasing multiple copies for your coaching staff, team, or program, I am offering several bonuses, like a 40% discount, signed copies, and a private video call with your team. But you'll have to place your order before Christmas. Once again, go to raiseyourgamebook.com for everything you need.
If you're looking for a great way to spend the holidays playing some basketball, please join us at one of our Head Start basketball holiday camps on December 27th and 28th, 2018. We'll have a camp at Hoop Guru Courthouse in Hinckley and also at St. Paschal Baylon School in Highland Heights. The Head Start basketball holiday camps will emphasize the fundamentals of basketball with individual attention given to each camper. You'll improve your basketball skills and have a ton of fun at the Head Start basketball holiday camp. To register or get more information, please visit our website, www.headstartbasketball.com. Head Start Basketball's Player Development Academy offers Cleveland area players a unique opportunity to improve their basketball skills. Regardless of a player's age, skill level, or position, training with Head Start Basketball will elevate your game to the next level. Do you want to improve your ball handling, become a better shooter, or develop into a more skilled, confident player? Our Academy classes offer training that's designed to do just that. Our training sessions are innovative and will have you learning skills that are transferable to actual games. We have 4 different class skill levels for boys and girls, ages 4 and up. All Player Development Academy classes will be held at the Strongsville Recreation Center. For more information or to get registered, please visit www.headstartbasketball.com. Thanks for listening to the Hoopheads Podcast, brought to you by Head Start Basketball.